So at the end of 2021, I cancelled several high-profile celebrities. Salt Bae, Mr. Beast and Chris Pratt all fell to my cancelling. Even Chris Pratt's own brother, Cully Pratt, was cancelled for good. But some people just won't stay cancelled, and today I have to resurrect the Kavernacle to finally cancel Chris Pratt, who has come out against my cancelling and blames the far left for the polarisation of American politics.
Now go! Let the legend come back to life.
So a lot of you guys used to like it when I cancelled people, and I was very, very good at my job, but I've been on a bit of a hiatus over the last 6 months. Yes, I've made some videos criticising prominent people like Russell Brand. I'm really doing a deep dive into their content. Yeah, I have criticised a fair few people. I haven't done an old-fashioned cancelling yet, and I saw this topic on Twitter, and I couldn't help myself, because you guys will know I made that video last year cancelling Chris Pratt. Did pretty well, got lots of people very mad about, like, how dare I criticise him, talking about God all the time. But he's actually responded to a lot of the criticisms people like me have, and he's actually been talking about politics, playing into my long-standing theory that this guy is going to run for politics in later life. But today what I want to talk about is, of course, his recent comments, his interview, I think it was with Men's Health, talking about why people don't like him, talking about his religion. Apparently, he's not actually religious, according to him. We're going to get into that as well. And then just generally giving my take on why people don't actually like Chris Pratt. Oh, also one more thing. You may have noticed the hat. It's my Republican cosplay. Sadly, I couldn't find the Under Armour pullover I have. I had to make do with my Red Bull Salzburg shirt just to get both the energy drinks in. I don't generally go for the monster camo hat look. But before we go into my cancelling, please like the video and comment, I guess. Do you like Chris Pratt as an actor? Do you think he's talented? Do you think he's good in anything? Personally, for me, the only film I like him in is Spike Jonze's Her. And I don't think he's like a particularly good part of that movie. I've never really rated him as an actor. I don't watch Parks and Recs. I never thought Guardians of the Galaxy was that good. In fact, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 might be one of the worst movies I've seen. So I have every incentive to cancel this guy, but let me know down in the comments. Also, follow me on social media at the Kavernacle, Twitter and Instagram. Check out my subreddit in the description. Also, consider becoming a patron. I want to build up as many $1 to $3 patrons as possible, and the benefits of that are getting access to my Nintendo Switch friend code and the private patrons Discord server. Also, my subreddit is in the description, and my second channel, the Kavernacle Extra, is also there too, where I archive my live streams, which I generally do 2 times a week. So how I came across Chris Pratt talking about his religion again was the Hollywood Reporter tweeted out, Chris Pratt is seeking to change perceptions about his religious views. He says he's not nearly as religious as people think. And then someone quote tweeted saying, Sir, I've seen you publicly pray in a restaurant over a pound of bison meat, and you didn't tip me compared to what you previously tipped our straight men on staff. Him trying to downplay his religion is a bit silly, but I'm going to get into how it's something common that evangelicals often do by saying, you know, they're not actually religious, it's just their relationship with Jesus Christ. But also, just to reiterate some of the points I made on my last videos, because I made 2 videos basically talking about Chris Pratt's Christian conservatism. Now, I will say from my research, Chris Pratt is not a Trump supporter. I guess that's the one thing going for him. And in my videos, I basically said, I feel like the influence of Arnold Schwarzenegger, his father-in-law, is probably something that has curtailed some of the bad impulses of his conservative views. But he is an absolutely massive simp for the armed forces, but also for the police as well. His brother is actually a policeman in the Solano Sheriff's County office or something. And it so happens to be, nearly all of them support the 3%er movement, and Chris Pratt has been pictured wearing some of these symbols as well at events, fundraising, or doing some, I don't know, some charity work or something for this specific sheriff's office. And I want you to keep that in mind when we read Chris Pratt's politics about how the far right and the far left are actually responsible for everything bad in America. Because I do want to get back to him saying this while exclusively following some of the most like far-right conservatives in America, while not following any other political people on social media. So let's get into the article. So Judy Kurtz said on Twitter she interviewed Chris Pratt for In the Know. I originally didn't know what ITK stood for, but Chris Pratt wackos on right and left make the US look more partisan than it is. Chris Pratt says tiny bands of vocal wackos on both the right and the left are fueling the political division across the country. There's an illusion of that we've gotten more partisan, but the truth, if you're looking at it from my understanding, which is a dumb understanding, is that there's a very small group of wackos on the right and a very small group of wackos on the left. Each of them are sort of echoed through mainstream media, whether it be Fox or CNN, and a lot of times there's political posturing to try and get onto Fox or try to get onto MSNBC or CNN. Pratt said there's a big group in the middle, politically, that instead of moving right or left, is kind of moving up and down and becoming disenfranchised and disengaged from the political process. Non-partisans, he said, feel like no one's really representing him. So absolutely incoherent nonsense there. So the far right is Fox News. The far right is platformed on Fox News all the time. The far left is not platformed on CNN. The far left is not platformed on MSNBC. And I don't believe that MSNBC or CNN are driving some sort of far left agenda that is polarizing the country and pushing people more into the center. But Chris Pratt, you just had this interview. What has the right-wing Supreme Court been doing lately, which is dividing America? All these decisions they've made, Roe, stuff about the EPA, stuff about governing Native American territory, they've done that all recently. And the conservative judges are always the ones voting for this stuff. Blaming both sides is absolutely ridiculous. And in an American context, I don't know if he's confusing like far left with some sort of like liberals who like Bernie Sanders, but the far left essentially has no representation in America. They basically have no influence on the discourse, which is driven by liberals, conservatives, and far right conservatives as well. So the belief that the far left in America, like actual far left, Marxists, socialists, people like me, are driving division and polarization is absolutely ridiculous, because there's such a massive difference to, I want to overthrow the US government to enact some sort of Christian theocracy or ethno-state, versus I want everyone to have universal healthcare, public housing, I want to tax billionaires more, I want to have a more equal society. There really is no comparison. If you're a centrist, you might try and frame it that way. There is no comparison. If you are feeling politically homeless in America right now, there is something wrong with you. You have Joe Biden, you have Nancy Pelosi, you have these center-right Democrats controlling power. Most Democrats are center-right. If you want that centrism, like Matthew McConaughey also claims he wants centrism, the centrism is there for you. It's ruling the country right now, and guess what? It doesn't work. It's obviously a privileged, rich, white guy position to be like, it's the far left and the far right destroying the country, while we watch the far right literally destroy America, while a centrist president looks on and does absolutely nothing. Biden should be Chris Pratt's guy. But anyway, let's finish the article. So Pratt is starring in some show called The Terminal List. It looks stupid. It looks like Chris Pratt is going down his career path of just starring in like god-awful action movies. So in the Amazon original show premiering Friday, Pratt plays James Reese, a Navy SEAL who has to deal with psychological trauma, the national security fallout, and the apparent still present threat from enemies after his platoon is ambushed during a covert mission. Ultimately, this is a story about a guy who's become a little disenfranchised, uses some of his insurgent tactics he's learned overseas, and exacts revenge on the folks who make decisions from air-conditioned offices. While the 8-episode series is fictional, there's a real-life threat that's fracturing the US. I think we just find ways to connect with one another, to understand that a lot of the division that's being sown in this country is actually a result of foreign adversaries who are angry and dislike us, slamming Russian troll farms that are on Twitter trying to help divide us as a nation. Ultimately, the way that we could bridge this divide, because the culture is upstream of politics, is just to kind of create a culture of unity that lives upstream of politics, that gets so popular that the politicians innately are going to grab hold of it. I think we understand that we have a lot more in common than we think, that we go back to common sense, kind of come back to the middle, and realise that we can engage some of these folks and not everything is politics. I think then we can kind of create a cultural wave that politicians are going to grab on to because it's popular. I do not understand the logic of centrist rhetoric coming out of Matthew McConaughey and Chris Pratt, which is acting like we don't have centrism ruling the US right now. You have a president in Joe Biden and someone like Nancy Pelosi who believes you need a strong Republican Party who are destroying the country right now. Joe Biden is from the 1970s school of bipartisanship, What more do you need? Yes, most people have more in common than what divides them. The people stoking that division are not the far left. It is the far right and liberals stoking that division. It isn't leftists who believe everyone deserves, regardless of race, religion, or anything, to have a good quality of life. What divides people in that message? Also a guy who's like obviously a massive simp for the military. Not surprising, he thinks the division is primarily stoked by foreign adversaries. Because everything in American politics, going back to like the 1860s and stuff, it's all been foreign adversaries stoking divisions. Not that there are real divisions in America, usually whipped up by the right wing as part of an absolutely massive culture war to derail things like social progress. There's some centrist brain going on with Chris Pratt. Doesn't seem like a generally very smart dude. But I also find his rhetoric absolutely laughable about the far left and the far right, considering out of all the political figures he could follow on Twitter and Instagram, he exclusively follows the far right, and he has done for a while. He used to follow Madison Cawthon, by the way. I pointed out in my old video. He unfollowed him like a couple months ago, but he still follows Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, this guy called American Sheriff Lamb, who is on the far right. He doesn't follow Obama. He doesn't follow Joe Biden. He doesn't follow Bernie Sanders. He's recently followed another page called Men of Strength USA. Manhood, mindset, fitness, freedom, Second Amendment, and God. And they posted a picture of this in response to Roe. And on Twitter, he follows Tucker Carlson, Dan Crenshaw, Ben Shapiro, and a whole host of other far-right conservatives. Chris Pratt, you are literally following the people that you've called out in your article. You're literally following the far right, who you say are dividing American politics. Not only that, you're not just following them, you aren't following any other political figures apart from far-right conservative groups and political commentators. Then you complain about how the far left and far right are dividing American politics. Which is it? While saying you're going to create a centrist culture through military propaganda movies. So now I want to get onto the claim that Chris Pratt is no longer like a conservative Christian, which he addresses in this article for Men's Health. So if he's suddenly not a Christian anymore, this is big news to me, since it seems to be everything he posts on social media is related to God in some way. And let's not forget this back in November, where he was crying at people being mean to him, and then talked about going for a run and then literally talking to God.
Good morning, everybody. I woke up, I went to bed last night really kind of upset and depressed, and I woke up feeling crappy, and I didn't want to work out. I didn't want to. I knew, though, that if I put on my Christian music playlist and I got out in the woods and ran, that I'd feel better, but I just didn't want to, and I did it anyways, and gosh, was I right. It felt amazing. I got out in the woods, got my blood pumping, and God is like, who sat down there right next to me? I say this as a guy who, I don't get emotional that often, but I actually got emotional out in the woods. I was out in the woods on this run, and I just felt like there was another in the fire standing next to me. And that was the song, actually. I don't know, I think that's the lyric in the song. I don't know the name of the song. It's a really good one. But that moment, it really captured me. And so I just want to say all glory to God. And if you feel down today, maybe get an exercise and maybe listen to some good worship music or get the word in, because it really helped me this morning.
As people have explained to me, as someone who was raised Catholic my whole life and never heard anyone speak like this is like a very evangelical thing and like a Southern Christian thing in America, where people think like you literally have a one-on-one personal relationship with God and he's like your buddy or something, and you like literally talk to him and act like he's in the room with you. I find it extremely bizarre. And it's clear it informs a lot of his political views if he's going out of his way to follow these like right-wing religious organizations. But now I want to get into the article where he addresses a lot of the hate he's been getting, and it is interesting. And then I kind of want to talk about the religious thing predominantly, and how him saying he's not religious doesn't actually mean he doesn't actually have Christian views, and maybe right-wing Christian views. So, how Chris Pratt became the people's Chris, I would dispute that a fair bit. Today, and on other days recently, he's been struggling to understand a disconnect between his perception of himself and who he is versus the public's perception of him, and why some corners of the internet love to troll him. We also love to cancel him. You don't ever want to get complaining or anything, because I have so many blessings. I consider everything a blessing truly in my life. But during a recent run, he tells me he couldn't shake the feeling, why are they coming after me? There is a meta-narrative hanging over today's conversation, and it stems from one of the dumber internet memes, the worst Chris. You've seen this. It went viral and resurfaces on Twitter with fans debating the merits of Chris Pratt, Pine, Hemsworth, and Evans. James Gunn, the director of the Guardians of the Galaxy films, it absolutely infuriates me. Chris is unspeakably kind. He goes out of his way to help kids. He's an especially loving father, and there's a lot of stuff that people have made up about him, about his politics, about who he is, about what he believes of other people, you know. Pratt has his own idea about the backlash. After our workout, we're meandering through the woods around his rental home, taking the scenic route to a local sandwich shop, when an innocuous question about filming Jurassic World overseas during a pandemic and having to care for his very pregnant wife via FaceTime leads to a surprising conversation about the origins of the internet bile and the role he believes he played in lighting the match. A few years ago, he explains, he was asked to give a speech at the MTV Movie Awards, and he was instructed to say something inspiring. So standing next to a trophy of golden popcorn, he said, "God is real, God loves you, God wants the best for you, don't be a turd." Most people just remember the God part. Maybe it was hubris for me to stand up on stage and say the things I said. I'm not sure I touched anybody. Religion has been oppressive for a long time, he says. I didn't know that I would kind of become the face of religion when really I'm not a religious person. I think there's a distinction between being religion, adhering to the customs created by man, oftentimes appropriating the all reserved for us, who I believe is a very real God, and using it to control people, to take money from people, to abuse children, steal land, and justify hatred. Whatever it is, the evil that's in the heart of every single man has glommed onto the back of religion and come along for the ride. Okay. Fair enough, not that I disagree with that. The situation wasn't helped by Pratt's alleged association with celebrity church Hillsong, whose official policies contain what can be generously described as non-LGBTQ affirming statements. After Pratt casually talked about his faith in 2019, Elliot Page called him out. Pratt at the time said that the church couldn't be this bigoted, nothing could be further from the truth. I am a man who believes that everyone is entitled to love who they want free of judgment. What he didn't say then and what he tells me now, I never actually went to Hillsong. I've never been. I don't know anyone from that church. Okay, why not say that at the time? I'm gonna throw a church under the bus. If it's like the Westboro Baptist Church, that's different. No one's suggesting that, but he could have read up on Hillsong. Pratt tells me he attends the Zoe Church, but I'm not sure the distinction will satisfy his critics. Zoe, also popular with Justin Bieber, was founded by Chad Veach. He executive produced a 2017 film that equated sexual brokenness with same-sex attraction. Pratt also mentions that he doesn't go to it exclusively. When it came time for Lila to be baptized, he and his wife chose a normie Catholic church in Santa Monica, where she worshipped as a kid. So Pratt's relationship with organized religion is maybe a work in progress. So just talking about the military stuff a bit more, the terminal list is a chance for Pratt to celebrate the men and women of the armed forces, which is clearly important to him, but I'm curious if the project also appealed to him on another level. James Reese is a decorated operative who cannot protect the most important thing in his life, his family. Was Pratt fighting his demons on screen? It was an opportunity for me to play a character who takes vengeance against the people who took his family, because I feel out of control around being able to protect my family when it comes to the press or Twitter. I was never actually aware of that. It's really, I think that might be an astute observation. So just before we move on, Chris Pratt is like the biggest simp for the military. And this is why people just don't like him generally. I don't know how he doesn't understand this. So he posted the pictures of these crying American soldiers on his Instagram during Memorial Day or something, and he wrote, "America's exceptional armed forces have altered the course of the world for the better. From the Union Army to the greatest generation, we count the names of every fallen soldier, lest they be countless. They are the good guys. They run to the sound of gunfire. They know pain and suffering. They have given us the most free and decent society planet Earth has ever seen." I don't understand why anyone wouldn't like this guy. We run the risk of losing that decency when we fail to install gratitude in the minds of our youth, or the perspective of what it actually means to be free, should they never learn of the selfless sacrifice of our armed service members in the face of oppressive evil. So join me in showing support for our fallen. Take a quiet moment to really consider the sacrifice, and if you use the comment section on posts like this to moan about America, please understand there are countries in the world where criticizing your government will get you imprisoned. Criticism is right and a necessity in amending the flawed systems of man, so by all means let your voice be heard, but never forget, your right to free expression is paid in blood. May God give their souls rest. So before we just get on to the evangelical saying of basically saying, I don't like religion, but I have a relationship with God and all those things, Chris Pratt is very confused that people don't like him. And maybe not all of the backlash is necessarily deserved, this guy being targeted out of everyone. It's more so is that he's very, very active on social media, which everyone has the right to be and is fine. But if you're very, very active on social media and post a lot of things that can annoy people, like the Instagram post I just read you, which is very like American exceptionalist, then don't be surprised if the global fan base of Marvel don't really take to you. And generally, people who Bible thump as much as Chris Pratt don't actually see the rest of us as equal, because a lot of their religion teaches, for example, if you're an atheist, you're going to burn in hell for all eternity, right? So if you get the vibe from someone, they believe in like this more like fundamentalist interpretation of religion, and while they might agree that, you know, you can be whoever you want on earth, but deep down I actually feel like I'm going to heaven and you're going to be chilling with the devil for all eternity, that doesn't make someone necessarily like you. For me personally, I read the statement about the soldiers and I'm like, this dude is so ignorant. Like, how can you think America is the most free and decent society? How do you think the US military has been a force for good in the world? And couple that with the fact he's calling out the far left for ruining American politics and alienating people, then yes, I'm not going to like you. I'm not going to troll you on social media all day and like write mean comments about your family, but I'm not going to like you because you have politics that are really contrary to mine, while also blaming people like me for what has happened in America right now, when you're also a hypocrite because you're a fan of a lot of people who are actually ruining America while pretending you're not. So it's him being disingenuous, and it's also him being a whiner for being called out for having annoying beliefs. And Matthew McConaughey suffers from a similar thing, blaming like both sides. At least Matthew McConaughey is a bit more entertaining because he just talks absolute nonsense, but he has a charm to him. Chris Pratt does not have any charm to him. I don't rate him as an actor. I don't respect him as an actor. So he just comes across as an extremely privileged white rich guy who's ignorant about politics and religion, but still loves to talk about them all the time. Which he's absolutely free to do, but you're also not going to be free of criticism, where Chris Evans, although he does seem like a bit of a naive liberal who likes to star in Israeli propaganda, he does seem like a decent enough guy. Like Chris Pratt hasn't been saying anything about how America is being destroyed right now. And that should tell you everything. Where a lot of celebrities, at the very least, will say something. Some celebrities, like Susan Sarandon and Mark Ruffalo, will actually say stuff that goes against the grain and is actually pretty decent. So you guys also might be wondering, with everything Chris Pratt says about religion, with all the ways he says it influences his life, how he apparently talked to God about 6 months ago in the woods, how he literally carried a cross up a hill on Easter Sunday one time, how could he think he's not religious? How could he criticize religion, talk about how awful religion is, while at the same time doing all these very, very religious things? So Mike from the Humanist Report tweeted this out in response to Chris Pratt saying this, and then I just DM'd him asking about evangelicals saying this, because I tried to find articles on the internet about evangelicals criticizing religion but loving Jesus and God, but I couldn't really find much. So Mike says, as a former fundamentalist Christian cultist, we're instructed to reject the label religious because being religious suggests you only follow the traditions of man, whereas being a Christian means you directly follow Jesus. This gives you plausible deniability when you make your Jesus pitch to people. Oh, you hate religion? Me too. That's why I ditched religion and started following Jesus. And then in our DMs he says, there's a lot of inherent hypocrisy and contradictions Christians just kind of pretend don't exist. But for me, the reason why they instructed us to reject the label religious is for a couple of reasons: to appeal more broadly to people fed up with religion, and to establish a sort of Christian supremacy, meaning Christianity isn't simply one of many religions, it's superior to other belief systems because it's not really a religion, it's more of a relationship with Jesus. They obsess over Jesus mostly because he's their one ticket to salvation. The ticket to heaven is asking Jesus into your heart. Once you do that, all is forgiven. Whereas a normal person who did no harm in the world would be excluded from heaven if they never asked for salvation. It's an extremely effed up belief system, but that's why there's such a strong emphasis on Jesus. Even if you don't really follow the Bible, you can still be saved so long as you accept Jesus into your heart. So obviously I've heard loads of BS in my life about accepting Jesus into your heart and all these different things, but I never knew there was this element of, yeah, religion is bad, accept Jesus into your heart and you will be saved, and how it's trying to pose as a belief system, because religions are like man-made. A lot of religions are started much later after Jesus' time. Various different sects of like Islam, Christianity, you know, Martin Luther started the Protestant Reformation, there's Calvinism, there's Lutheranism. You're following the inspirations of man on earth, whereas evangelicals, according to Mike, are often following like just Jesus. You don't have to pledge loyalty to the Catholic Church or any of these like Lutheran churches or anything. Just pledge loyalty to Jesus. And this actually frames the stuff I was talking about in my Carl Lentz and Hillsong video, where Carl Lentz makes the pitch to Logan Paul. It's just about Jesus, not about the other stuff. Don't worry about that. It's just about Jesus.
So our church is less about telling you what to do and trying to teach you how to think. And you got to come to these conclusions on your own. But normally you come into church, it's like 10 things you can't do. Can't drink, can't smoke, can't talk, like literally can't live. That's what it feels like.
Right.
And we'd rather, kind of reverse that and get people to know Jesus first. And then from there, you start realizing, cool, it's not that I can't do that. It's I don't want to do that.
What are the hard set rules that do exist in?
We are a church that just believes that the denomination aspect of things, it's less important than who we're talking about. The core tenets of our faith, it's to love people. Love people more than yourself. Put people first. Be kind. Be more thoughtful than you've ever been before. I think when you talk about rules, like Jesus said really clearly, if you want to do what I tell you to do, he took the 10 commandments, he made them 2. Love me and love your neighbor. Made it really simple. So all the rules and all the stuff that we put on religion, that's what people have done. But Jesus was the opposite of that. He said, if you really want to know what religion is, it's caring for the widows, helping out the orphans. And he was talking to religious people when he said that.
And in that video, I was giving him credit saying it's kind of, a good thing to focus on Jesus because he's better than the rest of the religion. But now I see it in a far more sinister light where they're trying to get you into the religion itself by focusing on Jesus, who seems a bit more uncontroversial. And it's amazing hypocrisy. They focus on Jesus. Like, I don't actually believe Jesus was real in any version we know him of today, but biblical Jesus seems like a pretty good guy. I even tweeted today that quote about him saying to a rich guy, it's more likely a camel will pass through the eye of the needle than a rich person getting into heaven. I mean, like, that sounds pretty good. But of course, far-right evangelical types don't actually believe rich people aren't going to heaven. A lot of them fund like these mega churches. But yeah, it's obviously like this PR speak and plausible deniability of, religion's done some awful things. Religion in America right now doing awful things. The Catholic Church done awful things. All I care about is God and my bestie Jesus. And that's all you got to worry about. And then you'll be saved and redeemed. And that's why I talk about it so much. No religion, don't worry about that. It's all about God. So I think with Chris Pratt, people just get frustrated that he wants to have his cake and eat it too. He wants to be more conservative leaning, but have everybody like him. He wants to have a brother who supports a far-right militia, and he's friends with all of them, and he will promote them. But then he wants everyone to like him. Then he blames the far left and far right for America's problems, but he actually follows a lot of people on the far right, and his own brother, again, supports a far-right militia. So with a lot of horrible conservatives, they just take satisfaction that they're loved by conservatives. And conservatives like Chris Pratt because he speaks about his faith. So he has that. Chris Pratt, you have that. You have millions of conservative fans who don't care about you talking about religion, who don't care about any of these things, don't care about your politics. They just like you because you're a prominent Hollywood conservative who talks about God. So why don't you just be happy about that? Like all those conservative celebrities who are happy with their rabid conservative fan base. The problem with Chris Pratt is he just wants to be liked by everyone, including people he criticises on the left, but he can't because he has views opposed to us, so we don't like him, and also he's not a good enough actor for us to discount that stuff and just like him based on his performances. So Chris Pratt's assistant or PR, if you're watching this, that's why people don't like Chris Pratt. And doing garbage military propaganda TV shows and series is not going to make left-leaning people like him anymore. So that is it. That is the final cancelling of Chris Pratt. I don't think he'll get many more roles in the future, but let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Also, follow me on social media at the Kavernacle, on Twitter, on Instagram. Consider supporting me on Patreon. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.